Welcome to VGP Music.
So we are, the heavy metal band from Japan, and we have been together for more than 30 years now because we formed Psy in 1990. So it's been 32 years now. And we have released 12 albums. So the new one is the 12th album. So, you know, we've been together for a long time. So yeah, our music is pretty much diverse, mainly, based on the thrash metal from the 80s, but we also take in other musical genre like classical music, jazz, and 60s, 70s rock, and of course some, Japanese traditional music too. So probably you need to listen to our music to know what we are doing musically. It's very hard to describe what we are doing with words, I guess.
Okay. And for this new album, you have a new lineup for this album, like Fred Leclerc?
Well, yeah, because when I started writing the songs for this album, it was early 2020. So it was the beginning of the pandemic. So I didn't think we would be able to go into the studio to record the album because back then, COVID was something really scary, unknown plague. So, I didn't want to go into a closed place like a music studio back then. So I asked Mike Heller from Raven or Fear Factory to record the drums for us because I knew he had his own studio and he could record everything at his own place. So I asked Mike and he said, okay. Then after that, actually at first, our guitarist was supposed to record the guitar, but unfortunately he started acting very strange. Like he was very, very slow in answering mail. Like, it took 3 or 4 weeks just to answer my email. So unfortunately, I had to let him go. I had to fire him. So, and I've known Frederick for a long time. I've known him for, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 years now. He loves Japan and he often comes to Japan. So whenever he's in Japan, we always hang out together. So, and of course, he's a great guitarist too. So it was, obvious choice to have Frederick once I found out our guitarist cannot be, cannot play on the album.
Okay. And so after you have a lineup for live?
Well, yeah, we will play in Czech. We will play at Brutal Assault next week, but we have a totally different lineup. We have a new guitarist, we have a new drummer. So, of course, Fred is very busy with Creator. Mike is very busy with Raven and other bands. So now I have a new Japanese, musicians, new lineup with a Japanese musician now.
Okay. And how came the signature with Peaceville Records?
Yeah, actually, I've known Paul, the CEO of Peaceville, for a long time, like for 20 years. So, and a few years ago, I visited London and met him again. And we talked about the possible re-release of our first album, Scorn Defeat. And it actually happened. The Scorn Defeat was re-released on Peaceville last year or 2 years ago. And it went very, very well. It was a great experience to work with Peaceville. So we decided to keep working together for the new album.
Okay. And you also released this year Eastern Darkness collection?
Oh, yes. First, we did a Scorn Defeat. Then after that, we did a Eastern Darkness with demo and, early stuff on Peaceville. So it is always great to work with him. It is probably the easiest, the label to work with. So definitely we will keep working together in the future too.
And do you like to listen your older stuff? Older music?
Well, other albums.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately not, because the older albums, still Cacophonous Records, claim to have the rights to all those albums. So unfortunately, right now we don't have any plan to re-release them at the moment.
And do you like to listen the early years of your band?
Myself?
Yes, yourself.
Well, I usually do not listen to my own stuff that much. Once album is out, I usually stop listening to them anymore.
Okay. So the new album Shiki will be released on 26th of August.
Yes.
What can you do about this legend of Shiki?
Shiki, the word Shiki has a lot of meanings in Japanese, like time to die, or 4 seasons, or conducting an orchestra, color, ceremony, and it's got a lot of meanings. But the main themes for this album is time to die and 4 seasons, because I'm 52, so now death became something very real, because Sai have been dealing with death from the very beginning, but it was something fictional when you were 20. So when you were 20 or 30, you have to die someday, but it is not something real. But when you are 50, unfortunately your friends started dying, and I just lost my dad last month. So all of a sudden death becomes something very real when you are very old. So I wanted to express my honest feeling about my fear of getting old or fear of death for this album. So that's why the title is Shiki. It is about time to die. And 4 seasons, if life has 4 seasons, it will be late autumn when you are 50. So it is also about my fear of getting old, So this is the album is strictly about getting old and fear of death you'll have to have when you are older.
This album seems more brutal than your previous album, Air to Despair.
Air to Despair, yeah.
It was more experimental. This album, Shiki, is more brutal, more intensive.
Well, I think so, because as I said, the theme is death. So obviously the lyrics are darker and heavier, and at the same time music had to be heavier and darker because of the topic, I guess.
Okay, it's because of the mood of the
yeah, because I wanted to express my fear of death as honest and straightforward as possible. So spontaneously music had to be dark and heavy, because it's a very heavy topic.
And this album is only in Japanese?
Yes. Yeah, because as I said, I wanted to express my feeling as honestly as possible. So I had to use my own language to do that. Also, one of the reasons I chose this topic was old Japanese traditional poem written about 800 or 900 years ago. So the poem it describes a scene where an old man watches the cherry blossom being blown off by the strong spring wind. So it is about, it is also about fear of death, because the cherry blossoms are very beautiful, but it is very fragile too, because usually they are gone in 4 or 5 days. So for Japanese, the cherry blossom is a symbol of fragility. It hasn't changed for 800 and 900 years. So I thought it was very interesting, because over these 800 and 900 years, our lives changed a lot. Now we have the internet, now we have AI and everything like that. But still, we have to have fear of this. You know, the 900 years ago, people had to have a fear of this. We are still the same. So I thought it was very interesting. So that was one of the reasons I used the Japanese for this album, because the trigger was an old Japanese poem.
Okay. Can you talk to me about your creative process? How can you do so much layer and still be coherent?
The process of
Creation, writing process. How can you do
writing? Well, it's always the same. First, I write the songs and I record the demo on MIDI, and I just keep listening and listening to see what the songs require. Then I keep arranging the songs, and I keep listening and listening until I'm 100% satisfied with the result. So it pretty much relies on my ears. So there is no formula or anything. I just have to keep listening and listening to see if it flows well enough. So that is the process of my writing songs.
because you have so much instrument on this album?
Yes. Yeah. I usually use a lot of instruments because I play a lot of instruments too. I play piano, I play flute, I play a lot of Japanese traditional instruments. So yeah, I have a lot on my musical palette, and I always choose the best to express my feelings. So sometimes it has to be piano, sometimes it has to be distorted guitar, sometimes it has to be a Japanese instrument. I just choose the best from my musical palette.
And also the electronics part are kind of weird.
Yeah, it is, but because I'm a keyboardist and I'm a collector of the old vintage keyboards from 60s and 70s. So I just like to use some vintage keyboards and use them as some electronic effects too. You know, I love the old movie soundtrack from the 70s, like sci-fi movies and horror movies, which has a lot of that kind of vintage keyboards effects.
When I listen to your music, I had a picture in my head like Junji Ito or stuff, or the weird scene of the Ghibli, like Princess Mononoke.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Junji Ito's, comics. His works are great, but I don't know if of course, our music should sound very Japanese to the Western people. So you may find something common in our music and Japanese horror, Japanese comics too. But I don't think it is intentional. It is rather spontaneous thing. As I speak Japanese, as I live in a Japanese culture, so well, it's I cannot escape the inspiration or influence from Japanese culture. No, even if I like it or not, I guess.
And you have a lot of influences in this album, like Asian, Oriental, EV, and Black Metal.
Yeah. This time I intentionally try to take in some Japanese musical, influences, because the topics are very Japanese too. The cover artwork is very Japanese, and I sang all the songs in Japanese. So I wanted to, have some Japanese or maybe some Asian atmosphere in music too. So, but this is my first time to do that. Before this album, I didn't want to have some Japanese influence, at least musically. Of course, I used some Japanese images for the artwork, and of course, I used some Japanese topic in the lyrics, but I didn't want to use Japanese, influences in music before. But this time, I finally decided to take in the Japanese influences in the music too.
I really like this album. It's like a crazy journey, you know.
Mm. Yeah, I think so.
And I see you made a loop with the intro and the outro, the same note.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, because at the end, it's the last song is about go. It is like, it is dying, and the soul goes to heaven. At the end of the outro, I use strange fruit called iwabue. It is just a small stone with a hole. So if you blow it, it's got a very high sound. You can hear it at the end of the outro. So usually that strange flute is a symbol of the soul going to heaven. So I used it and made it a loop with the intro. The intro is Kuroi Ka, no. It's Kuroi Inoli. Intro, it is Black Prayer in English. So yeah, of course, the first track, Kuroi Kage, the Black Shadow, is about death. And the outro is again about death and soul going to heaven. So yeah, it is a loop, as you said.
It's kind of about the way of life, a loop.
Yes. Yeah.
We always make the same mistakes, war, etc.
Sorry.
The human always makes the same mistake, like war.
War. Well, yeah, it's true, but well, this is not a topic of the album. The album is totally about fear of death and fear of getting old, nothing else.
What was your favorite song in this album?
The last one, the Mayonaka no Kai, the first single.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the best. Yeah, because it's got everything. It's got a great guitar solo. It's got flute solo. It's got Hammond organ solo, and it's got shakuhachi solo, and it's got vocoder, and it's got a high-pitched harmonies. It's got a throat singing. Yeah, it's got everything. So yeah, that's why I like the song best.
It's not an easy one for the first clip, and I really like the psychedelic in the video clip.
Yeah, video clip. Yeah, it is done by Costin from Romania. So yeah, the song is based on my strange experience. So long story short, I somehow experienced midnight twice in one night. So it was a very, very strange, and you can read the details at the end of the video, or you can read it in the booklet of the album. So, and I just told Costin about it, and I knew he would be able to visualize my experience perfectly, and he did a great job. The video is very psychedelic and strange, scary, and yeah, it is the perfect visualization of the song and the lyrics, I guess.
And for a first clip, it's not an easy song for the audience compared to the other song of the album.
I don't know. Maybe it is a bit complex, but still it's short. It's got a lot of scenes, but it's only 5 minutes. But I don't know. I personally think it is a very easy song to approach, but I don't know. It depends on your personal taste, I guess.
I like the prog vibe and how this song flows by itself with your vocals.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about Shuja Itsumitsu song?
Which one?
Shuja Itsumitsu.
Ah, Shouja Hitsumetsu. Shouja Hitsumetsu, it means all the living thing have to die. So it is kind of based on the Buddhism. So yeah, it's a very Japanese way of thinking. Everything has to go sooner or later. So yeah, it is a typical, it is one of the is one of the fear of death song on the album, and man, probably that is the fastest one on the album, I guess.
I really like this song because it's very heavy shit, straightforward in the wall.
Mm. Yeah, it is. It probably that is the most straightforward, and the most of the riffs were written by Frederick. So,
Okay. And will you release a special edition?
well, I don't think so. We just do some color vinyl, CD, and digital version, and that's it. Right now, we don't have any plan to do some special edition, unfortunately.
And how was the mixing process and mastering process?
Well, the mixing and mastering were done by Lasse Lamelt from Germany, because actually Mike Heller introduced Lasse to me because they have worked together so many times, and Mike's drumming is very complex. He plays a lot, and so I thought it would be the best to have Lasse mix and master the album, because he knew the Mike's drumming inside out. He knew about Mike's playing style, and I thought drumming was one of the keys to the album. So I asked Lasse to mix the album, and he did a great job. I think this album has the best production ever on among size works, I guess.
And the drum part are really crazy. And
Yes.
did you use some special drum?
I don't think so. He just plays the normal kit. So I just asked Mike to play as crazy as possible. So there's no holding back at all. So I said, he could play as flashy, as crazy as he wanted. So I don't think he used any special kit or anything. He just played crazy on the normal drum kit, I guess.
Have you got gigs in Europe planned?
Yeah, we will play in Czech Republic next week. Then next month we will go to Mexico. And actually there's a talk about some European dates for December too. We can't talk about it yet, but well, there should be an announcement sometime soon.
And if this tour coming, which band you want to play?
Sorry?
For this tour, which band will you want to play?
Well, actually, it's decided, but I cannot tell right now. So we're gonna play some great black metal bands in December.
Okay. And you also work in the video game?
Not anymore. I used to write songs for, compose songs for video games about 20 years ago, but now these days I'm too busy with other things, so not anymore.
You don't fait dub?
The voice works.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I just did my first voice work for the video game this year. So that was my first work with video games. So if there is any other opportunity, I will definitely do it again.
It was a good experience?
Well, it was very, very hard because I had to keep screaming for 3 hours. I thought I could handle it because I'm in a band I have been in a band for a long time, and I did a lot of gigs. I have a lot of recordings, so I thought I would be able to handle it very easily, but it was not easy at all. One of the hardest recording I ever had in my life.
You have a lot of demonic voice in this album.
Yeah, I just try to sound as heavy and evil as possible for this one. Yeah,
It sounds very evil, more than in English.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
The Japanese seems more evil.
Well, maybe, yeah, it sounds very evil and ethnic to probably the European people, I guess.
And how came the jazz influences in the band with the saxophone?
Well, people say, having saxophone is weird, but if you look at rock music, saxophone is nothing unusual. And in the 50s, saxophones were one of the basic instruments in rock music. So having saxophone is nothing, strange. If you look at rock music, maybe it's a bit strange in heavy metal or black metal, but I just love the sound of saxophone. It sounds very powerful and it can be very emotional. So I always love the sound of saxophones.
I like it too. And how did you decide for the set list of the album?
Set list of the album? What do you mean by the set list for the album?
To choose the order of the song.
For the album. Well, actually, we used most of the songs for the album. Only one song was thrown away because it wasn't great enough. But others are, all other songs were used for the album.
Okay. I leave you the word for the end of the interview.
Thank you for the interview. So it is a great pleasure. So yeah, hopefully we can come to France as soon as possible, because we haven't played in France ever. So yeah, definitely we love to come to your country if we have any opportunity. So, and thank you for the interview again.
Thanks, and maybe see you soon.
Yeah, thank you very much.